Hi there, welcome again to Insight Consulting. I'm Krisnan and I have with me my mentor, one of my mentors, and this conversation today is going to mean so much to me because I have with me Toney Olton. I call him Maestro. Now, when I started, I used to work in a student organization, and I also worked part-time in the restaurant hospitality industry. And when I was transitioning, someone connected me with Toney, and it has been a very good bond, very fluid bond so far. Ever since, Toney has shown me the ropes. He's invited me into his business. He's invited me into his family. And this interview just means so much to me to be able to talk with him and have him share what his own journey was like. I've heard it so many times, but it'll be great to have it broadcast to so many more people. And then to see what he's doing now, what he's up to today, and what's going on with Toney and the Potter Center.
Sure.
So Toney, thanks again for coming.
My absolute pleasure.
How did you get started? We know about the Potter Center.
Started with the Potter Center?
The Potter Center, yeah.
Wow.
What led to that?
Okay, so when I first left school, I taught in the school system for 5 years. Then someone persuaded me that I could do better for myself and invited me into the insurance business. Within 2 years, he invited me to train new agents. So he would go to recruit the agents, and then I would do the training. And that continued for about 5-6 years. And then one day he came to me and said, look, I don't think I can do any more for you here, but I know someone who has just joined another firm as a manager, and he's looking to recruit young managers. I said, but I'm not a manager. I don't have any management experience. He says, okay, but I recommended you. On that basis, then I left my firm, the firm I was with, joined this new firm, and I joined as a junior manager, what we call a unit manager. What am I responsible for? Recruiting, training, supervising, motivating a sales force. Then I became an agency manager. I did that for all of another about 7 years or so. Left the insurance business and kind of swam around for a while. I started a communications company. I did that for about 2 years.
Only no hearing about this one.
Did that for about 2 years. But my spirit was never quite settled with that. Okay. So when I reflected on, thought about what I could do with the rest of my life, then training and people development came naturally. I think the impetus that really cemented that for me was in that 3-year period of swimming and being uncertain as to what I wanted to do. I actually applied for a job at one of the major businesses in Bridgetown. I did a pretty decent interview, I thought. But at the end of the interview, the interviewer said something very interesting to me. They said to me, Mr. Olton, you clearly are the kind of person we're looking for, but I don't think we can afford to pay you.
Wow.
And I suppose whereas most people would have probably turned away and, that something went off in my head. And that was, hey, what she's really saying, you have value. And more value than we could pay for in terms of a salary. And so I thought about it for a while, and then that's when my spirit said, okay, look, just launch out. And so knowing all that I'd learned in the insurance business in terms of selling, in terms of people management, I launched out, approached a number of businesses, and a person to who I owe a great deal, Rogelyn Hines, who was then the Human Resources Director with Bradens. I went in, did my sales pitch as per my training in the insurance business, but I walked away with a sense that I didn't quite impress. Only to be called about 2 weeks later by the personnel officer of Bradens, to be told, we don't know you, but you sound as though you know what you're talking about. And that was the start of it. Somebody gave me the opportunity.
Wow. Your first opportunity as the Potter Center?
As the Potter Center was with what was then AS Braden. Yeah.
So I want to have you share a brief story. I know it is something that you speak about a lot, And it's about creativity and making opportunities, making the best of what you have. You usually talk about not being able to afford your regular board. And
Oh, yes, yeah, oh, yeah.
tell us about that.
I often use that story when I'm talking about the fact that you can never tell who will be significant in your life, and they need to walk around with a very open mind. So in my early days, I, busy trying to be the best that I can be and build a business. I was doing some training with some fire officers. We were using the conference room at the General Post Office, and I mentioned, can't even tell you how we got there. I mentioned that I had seen a flip chart at H.N. Rogers, $500 and odd. Of course, in the early days, you don't have that kind of money that you can just toss around. And a fireman said to me, by then Manning and Wilkinson or whatever was down on Fontebelle, he said to me, you can go down there and buy 2 S-hooks. Hook them on to the board so that you can then hook your paper. So I went from contemplating $500 for a flip chart to spending $3 and odd cents to be able to get what I wanted. And I always remember that. And so that's one of the things that causes me to walk around with a very open mind, because you can never be quite sure where you're going to learn, who you're going to learn from. Yeah.
Why that story stands out in my mind, having worked with you since 2014, 2015.
That seems like yesterday.
Yes. As a mentee, worked full-time internship or mentorship with Toney. And I was always impressed with your professionalism, not just turning up on time, but also having your stuff. Yeah. You have your equipment, you set up very professionally, and you're always well-resourced. So that story showed, you started from humble beginnings.
Very humble beginnings.
And now you walk around with your own projector and your own mics and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of level that I aspire to.
Well, one of the things I said in my very early days is that I wanted to be world class.
Right.
Can't tell you that I knew exactly what that meant. But in my head, I wanted to be able to perform at a level that I could compete or match up against anybody on the international stage. And that was always the standard I set for myself. Right. So my wife will tell you that I spend long hours. I'll have a presentation and I'll be working it and tweaking it and twisting it. If I'm to do a presentation or do a workshop, somebody might say to me, can you send us the presentation in advance? And I'm often reluctant because I'm tweaking and changing colors, a word, a picture, because I want to be able to tell, I want to be sharp. And so until the moment of delivery, I can go back in and change something. Nice. All to try and meet that, set that very high bar, right? Yeah. So my competition really is not, because I used the word competition just now, my competition is not really against any person. My competition is always trying to be my very best self.
Wow. And what I always say to myself is, I don't want to be like you, but I aspire to your standards.
Right. And I tell all the persons who I train, when I'm now doing, I suppose we're going to talk about that in a way, EQ Barbados. But one of the things I've told the persons who are doing that program, don't ever try to be like me. I borrow from a lot of work. I borrow from the Stephen Coveys, the John Maxwells, the Ken Blanchards, you name it. I borrow from a lot of material.
Jim Rohn.
I study a lot of those guys. But I don't use any of their material wholesale. I pick what I want and I develop me and my brand to be the brand.
Right.
And so I all the persons who I get to engage, I say to them, just be you. You be the best version of yourself and just let it go.
Nice. One of the things that I wanted to speak to you about is a decision you made when you were approaching 40.
Yep.
We recently did an interview with Carol Toppin, who does the program 40 Plus Phenomenal. Yeah. And that's a really phenomenal program indeed. And she said that something special, something interesting happens at 40. You made a decision at 40.
39 and change.
Right.
It was the year in which I was going to be 40. Before we get there, you need to tell you that one of the things I say is that the person who coined that phrase died at 39 and change.
Why is that?
Because he never got to experience arthritis. He had plans, and I suppose he expected a change of life and to be more fruitful, but he never experienced the downside. I remember the first day I went to look at my watch and realized that I couldn't quite make out the dial and the numbers on the thing. You know, you rubbing your eyes, and that was after 40. I remember having severe back pain for 40 or mid 40s. So he was looking forward to 40, but he himself never made 40.
That's Tony's story.
That's my story.
That's Tony's story.
That's my story. Yes.
So what was that decision that you made?
I think most persons looking on from the outside would probably think, well, he's doing pretty good for himself. But Stephen Covey says that we lead 3 lives. We lead a public life. That's the life that everybody sees. We lead a private life, so that's when we are aware by ourselves. But then he says we lead a deep inner life. And I think within my own deep inner life, there was that sense of having not fulfilled all of that potential, not living my best life, not being my best self, not being my best person. And so there was just something deep on the inside of me said that whatever I was experiencing, whatever I was doing at that point in time, that there was something more available to me, that I could be better, that I could do more with my life. So I can actually give you the date.
Okay.
It was the 20th of February, 1994.
20th of February.
1994. I can tell you the location as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did that mean for you? What did this decision mean for you?
Well, it has set me on the course that I've sought to live for the last 25 years. And my decision simply was that I wanted the second half of my life to be far superior to the first half.
I can't tell you how much I've heard that statement from Tony.
Yes. And that's the quest I've been on. It doesn't mean I've gotten everything right. And no one ever does. But because I've set that mark, that vision of myself, being the absolute best version of myself, what it means is that on an ongoing, continuous basis, you're constantly seeking to make decisions, small decisions, medium decisions, large decisions that are in concert with that person that you said you are or that you desire to be. So that has been the impact. And so how I use resources, how I treat people, how I spend time, really is driven by that desire to be the best version of myself. Like I said, not perfect, but it gives you a framework around which to organize your life.
One of the things that has stood out resoundingly in my mind from you is develop relationships, building rich relationships, and your desire to network and to create a circle, a family of relationships which are rich and meaningful. What does that mean? Let's hear it from you. What does that mean?
I can't tell you what triggered it, but something went off in my head a long time ago. And that is that part of living your best life has to do with your capacity to connect with others. I've come to the understanding and deep belief that we were created for relationships, that we were created to operate in a very interdependent way. So with that awareness, I've been very deliberate. Having made that decision, because the things are linked, having made that decision to become the best version of myself, and to be, as I put it, for the second half to be far superior to the first half, one of the things I needed to attend to was relationships, because that would have been one of my weaknesses or areas of challenge prior to that 39 and a half when I made that decision. So I've set up very consciously and very deliberately over the years, to the point where my children tell me they hate to walk around with me. Because I stop every whatever period of time, and somebody, hi, how are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? I'd have a conversation. I remember I was in New York once when I was to met a friend by the Empire State Building. As per usual, I got there on time. Them ran a little late, so I'm looking around and I'm looking around and I'm looking around and I'm watching and people are going backward and forward. And for the 10, 15 minutes I stood there standing, nobody said, "Hi, Tony." That does not happen in Barbados. And for me, that's
an anticlimax.
Yeah, that's something that I treasure. You know, that wherever you go, you're received. People are warm towards you. I know in a very real way the difference that it makes. It makes life easier.
Yes.
When you have good functioning relationships.
Yeah.
And easier in all kinds of ways. I could tell you a million stories as to how my life has been made easier in any one moment in time simply because of a relationship.
Nice. And I've seen it. I've seen it work for you. I've seen it work in my life as well. When I first started, Tony would have put me on to some of his connections, and just the connection, just saying, Tony recommended me to you. And they opened the door. They said, yes, we can trust you. And those are those types of relationships where you have been able to even move on to this new initiative, EQ Barbados, and where persons have bought into it, and you've been able to develop a program and begin an outreach throughout our nation, and hopefully throughout the Caribbean soon, to make a difference in lives. Before we go into that, EQ Barbados, I want to just share my side of the story in terms of what happened on my end. So we met sometime late 2014 into 2015, and immediately was the idea of wanting your life to be, the second half of your life to be better. And the other thing that I heard was stories of relationships, what happens when you have rich relationships. And I said, that's one thing. Other thing is part of your mission statement, which is living in peace with yourself and others. I adopted that part of it to my own, where I wanted to live a quality of life where I was happy with myself and people around me were comfortable, enjoyed being around me. So those were the first two impressions that were left, that you left. And then I saw you in action, training. The first project that I did with you when I started full-time internship was with a government department. And they're on time, I think it was like half an hour early, had all your equipment, and that week was an amazing week. It was long. A week is long when you're doing full day, but the kind of impact, the kind of difference that people were seeing even as they were going through their week, coming back and reporting the next day, it was phenomenal. Seeing how organized you were was fantastic. So I just want to give a little bit of the impressions that you were making. I don't know, you never know when opportunities like this occur to speak with your mentor publicly. But I really want to say you've made a significant difference in my life so far.
That's because there's someone who made a difference in my life. There's more than one, but there's one significant one. And I really don't miss an opportunity to give him credit.
Okay.
So that what you see of me, to a high degree, flows out of the fact that I once had someone in my life who believed in me, who created opportunities for me. He passed last year, but till my dying day, I know that I am the man that I am today because he saw something in me and gave me the opportunity. His name was? Charles Anthony Patterson.
I hear it all the time.
And our relationship wasn't one where there was formal training. It's just the relationship we had, the conversation we would have offline. He used to smoke a pipe, and he would, every now and then he would drop a quip on me, something that would make you sit up and make you think. So that today, all these years later, oftentimes when I'm doing something or thinking about something that he has said to me comes back into my head and helps to shape my decision making.
Nice.
Yeah.
So where you used to engage with him, where y'all used to meet up, where y'all used to?
At work for the most part.
Oh,
I would go to his home every now and then. From time to time, I would go to his home, but basically ours was a professional relationship.
Okay.
But it turned afterward to be a father and son. Not we use the term mentor or mentee, but it really was a father and son, a genuine human being who was fully composed of himself and therefore he was confident giving himself. And I saw him being, his generosity really knew no bounds.
Wonderful.
And so I tend to part of my life after him.
So after those initial days, when seeing him in action, internship with Toney, I decided that, well, actually, Toney encouraged me to continue to develop myself. He encouraged me to get trained, to get developed. So I did some training with Franklin Covey International. I did, went further, I did training with Tony Robbins. And I eventually went off to do my training in hypnotherapy. Actually, specifically about hypnotherapy, I worked with you on a project to train teachers, and you brought someone in, Nicole Snyder.
From Global NLP.
Yes, and I learned that NLP was grown from or developed from out of hypnotherapy and other psychotherapy techniques.
Yes.
So I was very, very apprehensive and unsure as to whether I wanted to expose my people into this thing called NLP that had roots in hypnosis. And I did research and I was comfortable with it, that hypnosis is something that I wanted to do because my goal was helping people to overcome trauma. And then I decided at that point that I would go and study hypnotherapy, and my business has started. Right. So I do lots of work with trauma. I do lots of work with confidence and emotional issues, not just with the hypnotherapy, but also with the life coaching aspect of it.
Right, and I've seen you develop to the point where now I'm comfortable saying to persons who inquire, where I know you can be a better resource than I could be in a particular moment, pass them on to you. Correct. And that's what life is about, you know?
So now there's a new initiative called EQ Barbados.
EQ Barbados, yes.
How did that start?
Wow. We had a rash of murders, late January, February, and March. And because of my training, because of my background, something told me that where murder is at the extreme of mal behavior, that if that has increased, if I come back inside the spectrum of behaviors, then there has to be a higher level. There has to be higher levels of dysfunction across that spectrum. And so then the question is, so what do you do? So you're either going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. And because of the quantum of time I've spent learning, studying, and teaching emotional intelligence, I figured that has to be, if not the one of the solutions that I could then bring to bear. So I just launched out.
So what is emotional intelligence? Because that's EQ stands for what?
EQ stands for emotional intelligence, yeah.
Okay. What is emotional intelligence?
Okay, so we have for a long time valued IQ, your intelligence quotient.
Yes.
Evidenced by your intellect.
Yeah.
Evidenced by your CXCs and your degrees. The challenge with IQ and the value we placed on it is that talks to your ability to navigate the world outside of yourself. Emotional intelligence is about navigating the world on the inside of yourself. And that is a significant deficiency in, university. So we learn geography and French and Spanish and history and physics. Brilliant. But who talks to you about how your mind works? Who talks to you about the impact of emotions on your behavior? Who talks to you about things like being present? The difference between consciousness and subconsciousness. The fact that your subconscious mind is always at work, never sleeps. The fact that the programming for your subconscious mind, 50% of it was largely in place by the time you were 2 years old. 85% of it was largely in place by the time you were 7 years old. So I'm now 25, 35, 45, and I'm functioning in a particular way. Who helps me to understand that stuff?
That functioning was put in place by age 7.
By age 7.
Yeah.
By age 7. That's probably why, if you were married, you go home and tell your spouse, "Man, I work with bare little children," because the behavior you are seeing is childish behavior. but it is a behavior largely formed by the time you were 7 years old.
Right. And so what is the type of impact that you see this EQ, emotional intelligence, making?
Well, okay, so if you are emotionally intelligent, a number of things are going to happen. You are less impulsive.
Okay.
You're less impulsive. You tend to think about your actions before you act. Yeah? You tend to be the person who is, the term we use is intrinsically motivated. A large part of the problem we're having in Barbados today is that too many of our young people are not motivated. If you're emotionally intelligent, something triggers on the inside so that your motivation comes from within. So you don't need a carrot, nor do you need a stick to get up and make things happen. So the mere fact of starting EQ Barbados, without having any resources, without having a very clear sense as to the steps and the order in which things we're going to run, just a confidence that if I step out and I'm deliberate, if I'm intentional, if I'm purposeful, things will happen. That is the evidence of being emotionally intelligent. Right? So that I'm stepping out, and things don't quite work out in a particular way. Adaptability, resilience, all that is part of becoming emotionally intelligent.
So you choose your life, and you choose your options and your actions.
And you have chosen the operative word, choose. If part of becoming emotionally intelligent is that you become not just a choice maker, you become a conscious choice maker. You become very intentional in your thinking, in your feelings, and in your behaviors.
Right. Okay. So what are the plans for EQ Barbados going forward?
Wow. Okay. So we've just completed training the first 42 persons. You talked about relationships earlier. Several of those, I can't say most, I don't have the sense of numbers, but many of them were persons I had previous relationships with. We are now halfway through training the second 32 participants in cohort 2. I'm currently training a cohort of magistrates, persons who work in the probation department, persons who work at the government industrial school, and persons who work in the judicial system.
All that is one
That is one cohort.
Wow.
And so I'm going to wrap up training with them in 2 weeks' time. But the major project to date for us is going to be the training of teachers in emotional intelligence. And so
training teachers in emotional intelligence.
To use emotional intelligence and as well to use NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. We can explain what that is and why it works, how it works, and give them some tips and techniques. But that for us is a major undertaking. The goal is to train 800 teachers this summer.
Wow.
In emotion, because we need a major thrust. Teachers are struggling. I began my career teaching. I enjoy teaching. It's my passion. It's my heart. But I know too many teachers are under pressure, looking for answers. So I know my subject material. I want to teach. But how do I teach? When I'm spending more than half of my class just trying to maintain order, when I'm spending half of my time with issues around discipline, and not sufficient of my time transferring or facilitating learning.
But there are disciplinary issues. So
there are disciplinary issues, but again, the disciplinary issues stem from the fact that our children are not highly self-aware, not highly self-managed.
Okay.
So how do you as a teacher turn it with a class of 30, 35, 20, whatever your number happens to be, and maintain control in that space? Not even control, because you really can't control the other human being, but to be able to maintain influence, secure influence, and function effectively in that space.
Okay.
So if there's an awareness that you need to have, and there are tools that are available to you, that you can turn up in this space, and regardless of what is happening in that space, eventually shape what happens in that space. And that's why we're going to be sharing it with we're calling it EQ in education.
Okay. And those workshops will be coming off in August, the last 3 weeks in August.
Well, the first is August 6th to 9th. That's one workshop. August 20th to 23rd, and August 27th to 30th. So there are 3 workshops, each 4 days, and then you choose the 4-day workshop that best suits your own schedule.
Okay. It has been a pleasure, Toney. I enjoyed this conversation, of course.
You don't know how thrilled I am.
I don't ever miss an opportunity to hear your mind and to see you in action. Many times it's just a matter of just being in your presence and seeing how you operate.
And that is how it was with myself and Chaz, just sharing space.
And it's been good having this conversation. I really wish you the best in your endeavors. Continue to grow from strength to strength. Realize that there are people looking on. Continue to do what you've been doing. And I look forward to working with you and collaborating with you in the future with the Potter Center and EQ Barbados.
Absolutely.
So thanks a lot for this time.
Continue success, my friend.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And I want to encourage you to get involved in programs like EQ Barbados. Of course, you have the Potter Center. Their specialty is leadership, management, customer service training, as well as assessment, personality assessment. You can also go to them for employee evaluations and employee assessments. A whole bunch of resources there at the Potter Center with Toney. Also get involved in EQ Barbados. And from us here at Insight Consulting, we can help you to take control of your emotions, your thoughts, and your behavior, manage stress, and become your best self. So I look forward to working with you and helping you get into that place that you see yourself. Have a wonderful day.